My wife announced, "We've decided you're getting divorced," with her friends watching. I said, "Okay," and walked out. 2 weeks later, she was sobbing outside my hotel room, saying I ruined her life. I pulled into the driveway that Friday evening around 6 o'clock. The Arizona sun was already low, casting long, sharp shadows across the terracotta tile roof. I was tired, the kind of deep weariness that only comes from a week spent dealing with supplier botches and freight negotiations across multiple time zones. As a corporate logistics manager, my entire world revolved around solving problems that should never have existed. My reward was supposed to be silence, a beer, and the functional comfort of my own home. The moment I opened the door, I knew that comfort had been revoked. Anna was sitting at the dining room table, positioned like a CEO preparing for a hostile takeover. She had a cup of herbal tea, her posture rigid, and a strange, almost excited anticipation in her eyes. Across from her were Lauren, Kristen, and Beth, her self-appointed empowerment group. They were all wearing those slight, self-righteous smiles that suggested they were present not as guests, but as moral witnesses to a historic event. It was clear the stage had been set. "Hey," I said, dropping my worn leather briefcase just inside the mudroom. The sound seemed violently loud in the silence. Didn't realize we were having company tonight. Anna did not return the greeting. She did not offer a, "How was your day?" or a customary peck on the cheek. She just stared at me, then took a breath that was clearly meant to convey solemnity. "We need to talk," she stated. I paused, reading the room with the practiced detachment of someone assessing a supply chain failure. My $300,000 home, which I had bought and paid for years before I met Anna, suddenly felt like a deposition room. The three friends were watching me. Their expressions a carefully curated mix of pity and confirmation bias. "Okay," I replied, keeping my voice level. Fighting the surge of professional adrenaline that told me this was a crisis. Should we talk privately? I gestured toward the kitchen, away from the peanut gallery. "No, sit down." They are here for support. That single line, "They are here for support," was the key to the entire operation. This wasn't a conversation, it was an announcement. I walked over to the dining room table, pulled out a chair, and sat down alone on my side. It felt like I was facing a tribunal. Anna glanced at her friends, drew another dramatic breath, and launched into her prepared text. "We have been doing a lot of work on ourselves lately. Personal growth, self-reflection, really examining what we want from our lives and relationships. And through that process, we have come to realize that we deserve more from our relationships than what we are currently getting." I caught the "we" immediately. This was a group decision, a group philosophy being enacted in my kitchen. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked. "It means I want a divorce," she said flatly, like she was ordering a new subscription service. The silence that followed was heavy and complete. Somewhere, a logistical part of my brain noted that this was a crisis situation. But I wasn't feeling panic. I was feeling the precise, surgical absence of shock. I had run the numbers on this relationship for months, watching the indicators flash red. The outcome was functionally inevitable. A divorce. I repeated. Yes. Shh. I have outgrown this relationship. You are a good person, Albert, but we are not compatible anymore. H. I need someone who challenges me intellectually, who sees me as a true equal. H. Who pushes me to grow instead of keeping me comfortable. I leaned back slightly in my chair. I'm sitting right here, Anna. H. You can skip the prepared speech you rehearsed with your support group. Her eyes flared with genuine anger. H. A reaction to having her script interrupted. Lauren, the boldest of the group, interjected. She deserves to be happy. Albert. H. You can't blame her for that. I turned my head slowly to face Lauren. I wasn't aware I was having this conversation with you, H. This is between me and my wife. Kristen, predictably, jumped in. We're here because this is incredibly hard for Anna. H. She needs support during this difficult moment. The least you could do is be respectful. Respectful. They had just blindsided me. H. Announcing the destruction of 7 years of marriage, like a press conference, and I was being lectured on respect. H. The sheer absurdity of the moment neutralized any lingering emotional pain. The professional mindset took over entirely. Do not panic. Assess the situation objectively. Execute the contingency plan. I stood up, pushing my chair in slowly and deliberately. Shh. Okay, I said. If that's what you want, Anna. Then okay. Anna was visibly thrown. Her confident posture wilted. Ish. That is it. You are not going to fight for us. H. Try to change my mind. I grabbed my keys and wallet from the small table by the door. You just announced you want a divorce. H. You have 3 friends here to support you in case I got upset or disagreed. H. You have obviously thought this through and made your decision. H. What exactly am I supposed to fight for at this point? I thought you'd at least want to talk about it. Show some emotion. H. Try to understand what I'm feeling. I looked directly at her. You want emotion? Here it is. I'm not interested in being part of whatever social experiment you and your empowerment group are running. You want a divorce. Fine. H. We'll handle it through lawyers like adults. I'll be staying somewhere else tonight. As I opened the front door, H. Beth piped up with the most astonishing line of the evening. Wow. So, H. You are just going to abandon her when she is being vulnerable and honest about her needs. I didn't turn back. I just walked out the door, got into my paid-off sedan, and drove to a decent extended stay hotel 15 minutes away. H. I checked in for a week. The whole time, my phone was buzzing relentlessly with Anna's texts. I didn't respond to a single one. H. I was no longer a husband. I was a logistics manager dealing with a critical failure. The first step was isolating the damage. H. The playbook had begun. He realized the first step of any crisis management was securing resources, and his first resource was Tyler. H. The hotel room was sterile and silent, a perfect psychological counterpoint to the theatrical chaos I had just left. H. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally picked up the phone. The messages from Anna continued to pile up. 40. 2 unread texts. Shifting from angry accusations to bewildered pleas. I muted the thread entirely. They were irrelevant noise. H. The real data was elsewhere. My first call was to Tyler Hayes. Tyler and I had been tight since college. H. $3.2 million for that he worked in commercial real estate now, which meant he saw the messy financial fallout of human relationships on a weekly basis. H. His advice was always grounded in cold reality, a perspective I desperately needed. Dude, that's completely insane, Tyler said, after I gave him the terse minute rundown of the dining room announcement. H. She had her friends there like it was some kind of press conference announcing her decision. It was surreal. I confirmed. But it was calculated. H. She wanted witnesses for her a brave moment, preemptively framing me as the villain. Tyler's voice instantly shifted into his business register. H. You need a lawyer immediately, Albert. Like, first thing Monday morning. Don't wait. Don't think you can handle this yourself. H. Get professional legal help right now, the kind that specializes in making clean, sharp cuts. Already planning on it. I've heard good things about Patricia Vance. Patricia. Good. She's tough as nails and doesn't deal in emotion, which is exactly what you need. Listen, Albert, I hate to say this, but you should probably check whether she is cheating. The thought had been humming at the back of my mind. H. A low-frequency hum of denial I'd been trying to ignore. My stomach felt suddenly hollow. That whole setup. H. Man, Tyler continued. The friends providing backup, the rehearsed speech about needing more, the sudden decision to divorce. H. That screams guilty conscience trying to control the narrative before you find out the truth. I thanked him and hung up. H. The word truth echoing in the clinical quiet of the hotel room. Tyler was right. I was a logistics manager. I dealt in facts and data. H. Not denial. If my marriage was a supply chain, I needed to audit the inventory for theft. Saturday morning, I opened my laptop. H. I didn't hire a private detective. I started with what I knew best: data mining. H. I still had full access to our joint credit card account through the bank's website. H. I scrolled through the past few months of transactions, looking for anomalies. I wasn't looking for gifts or groceries. H. I was looking for patterns that defied the functional normality of our life. That's when I found them. H. Repeated charges at the Marriott downtown. The charges weren't random. H. They occurred consistently every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon for the past 8 weeks. The amounts varied. H. Usually including parking fees, sometimes room service or a quick bar tab. H. Anna supposedly worked from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays now that her law firm had shifted to a hybrid schedule. I had never questioned it. Why would I? We had been functionally okay. I referenced the dates with the digital calendar we shared. Every single Tuesday and Thursday. She had blocked off the hours between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the afternoon with vague entries, client meeting, or focus time, do not disturb. Anna was an executive assistant. She scheduled meetings for the attorneys, but she didn't have clients herself. That was the first data point of outright deception. I kept digging. I noticed another recurring anomaly. H. Charges at an upscale men's clothing store. $340 in one transaction. H. Then another $280 a few weeks later. Designer items. Anna didn't have a brother. Her father lived 4 states away. Who was she buying expensive men's clothing for? H. And why was it timed precisely with her new independence? Philosophy? The evidence was mounting. H. Moving from circumstantial to compelling. The cold, logical resolve I had felt when I walked out the door now had a distinct H. Sharp edge. I was not shocked. I was validated. My gut, the subconscious calculator I'd learned to trust in my high-pressure job, H, had been right. This wasn't about our compatibility. It was about covering up a transgression. H, the emotional shock of betrayal, was being neatly bypassed by the strategic focus on proof. I was no longer a victim. I was an auditor, H. And I was about to complete my report. I meticulously organized the credit card statements and printed them. H. The audit was nearly complete, but I needed the narrative, the confession, that would make this legal strategy airtight. H. That required one final, risky move before meeting with Patricia Vance on Monday. The emotional landscape was still guarded, H, but the strategic focus was absolute. I was operating purely on logistics now. And the next piece of evidence was waiting for me at the house. The evidence was fragmented, H, but the last piece of the puzzle, the emotional truth, was waiting on the forgotten iPad. I spent the entire Saturday evening and Sunday morning printing and organizing the credit card statements, H, creating a physical timeline that documented the sudden, twice, weekly Marriott charges. It was a cold, hard ledger of betrayal. But a list of dates and dollar amounts, while legally useful, didn't tell the full story. It lacked the narrative thread. The H, the digital confession that would seal the case and allow me to finally let go of the emotional residue of doubt. H. I needed the voice of the affair. I needed the messages. I remembered the old tablet. We had a 10-inch iPad, several generations old. H. That had been relegated to a charging dock in the home office. Anna sometimes used it for recipes or reading, but she rarely carried it. Shh. If she hadn't logged out of her iCloud account, and if message sensing was still enabled, that device held the truth. It was a risk. Returning to the house, but a calculated one, Anna was likely out with her support group, celebrating her supposed freedom. Sunday afternoon, around 2 o'clock, I drove back to the quiet, suburban street. My house looked exactly the same. H, a 3-bedroom ranch style testament to 10 years of financial discipline. I let myself in with my own key. H, moving through the space with the silent efficiency I used when moving critical, high-value inventory through a warehouse at night. H, the air inside felt heavy, stagnant, as if the oxygen had been poisoned by the events of Friday night. H, I went straight to the small office. The blinds were drawn, and the room smelled faintly of old paper and dust. The iPad was exactly where it should be, sitting innocuously in its charging stand. I unplugged it, slid it into my backpack, H, and was back in my car in less than 8 minutes. I didn't look around. I didn't touch anything else. I was a ghost, H, completing a single, precise objective. Back at the hotel, I powered up the device. My hands were steady, but the muscles in my jaw ached from clenching them since Friday. I navigated to the messaging app. The screen lit up, H, and the messages began to sync, the conversation threads downloading rapidly. There it was, a long H. Continuous thread with a contact named Blake. The name meant nothing, but the messages told a story in painful, excruciating detail. They had been going on for 7 months. They started innocently enough. H. Friendly banner about workouts and gym routines, but quickly progressed. Soon there were flirty texts, then plans for lunch. H. And then the inevitable escalation. Can't wait to see you Tuesday, counting down the hours. He has absolutely no idea. H. And honestly, I don't think he would care if he knew. The sheer casual cruelty of that last line was a gut punch. You make me feel alive in ways he never could. Blake was exactly the cliché I had feared. H, a personal trainer at Anna's expensive yoga studio downtown. The man was a symbol of the excitement and challenge that I... H, the boring logistics manager who paid the mortgage, supposedly lacked. I scrolled backward through the thread. H, reading the narrative of my own destruction. The messages confirmed the Marriott charges were there twice, weekly afternoon meetings. The men's clothing purchases were explained too, a gift Blake had requested charged to our joint account. I felt a surge of cold. H. Quiet rage. It wasn't the cheating that stung the worst. It was the financial arrogance and the psychological manipulation. H. She had financed her affair using our marital funds, all while her friends validated her actions. One message, H. Sent 6 weeks prior to the divorce announcement, stood out, confirming Tyler's suspicion about the coordinated nature of the split. H. Once you tell him you want the divorce, we can finally be together properly without all the sneaking around. H. You deserve someone who appreciates you for who you really are. Ish. Not someone who keeps you in a comfortable cage. The pieces snapped into place with horrifying clarity. H. This entire divorce announcement, the performance with the friends, H. The script about mediocrity. It wasn't Anna having a genuine personal epiphany about our compatibility. H. It was a carefully planned operation to secure her future with Blake and loot the assets, while framing herself as the brave victim of an unfulfilling marriage. H. The empowerment group hadn't been supporting her decision. H. They had actively helped her justify the affair by reframing it as self-empowerment and choosing herself. I methodically took screenshots of everything, hundreds of them. H. The sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming, yet deeply satisfying to my strategic mind. This was no longer a personal tragedy. H. It was a matter of professional documentation and legal execution. I didn't delete anything, didn't log out. H. I carefully noted the model number of the iPad. I saved the evidence to my phone and laptop, securing the data off-site. H. My emotional beat shifted from shock and cold, resolve to quiet rage and surgical focus. I allowed the pain of the betrayal to fuel the clarity of my strategy. There was no space for tears or despair now, only the need to finalize the execution plan. The evidence was irrefutable. Tomorrow, I would meet Patricia Vance, H., and the counter-offensive would begin. The folder of evidence, organized like a critical shipment manifest, H., was laid out for Patricia Vance. Monday morning, I walked into the downtown office of Patricia Vance. Her reception area was sleek, minimalist, and expensive, radiating an air of untouchable competence. When I met Patricia, she was exactly as Tyler had described. Late 40s, sharp and focused, wearing a suit that looked tailored for legal warfare. There were no pleasantries, only efficiency. I placed my folder on the polished mahogany desk. It contained the printed credit card statements, meticulously highlighted with the Marriott charges, H, and a stack of 7 printed screenshots of the messages between Anna and Blake. I'm Albert. Tyler Hayes recommended me, I stated. H. I believe I have enough documentation to expedite this process. Patricia didn't waste time on small talk. H. She opened the folder and began reviewing the material. She read through the timeline of the affair. Cross, referencing the Marriott dates with the message excerpts. She paused only once to examine the documentation for the house. H, which I had purchased 3 years before I met Anna, with the deed solely in my name. After about 15 minutes of total silence, she leaned back in her chair. The slightest hint of a smile touched her lips, a look of professional satisfaction. Okay. H, Albert, she said. This is a very clean file. You've done all the preparation for me. Arizona is a no-fault state. H, meaning the affair itself doesn't directly change the asset split, but it absolutely matters for context and negotiating leverage. H, we will use this to ensure she doesn't waste our time or yours. She took a fountain pen and began tapping the document related to the house. The house is entirely yours. Purchased before marriage, deed in your name, payments from your account. H, that is not marital property subject to division. Your retirement accounts, we protect the contributions made before the marriage. We split contributions made during the marriage, and she gets the same treatment for her retirement. Clean, fair, H, legally airtight. The simple declaration that the house was secure landed with immense weight. It wasn't just a building. H, it was the tangible representation of my financial discipline and the prophetic warning from my father about protecting what you build. H, the knowledge that Anna could not, after 7 months of betrayal, take half of what I'd spent a decade building. H, reinforced my detached resolve. What about everything else? I asked. Joint savings. H, furniture. Any assets acquired during the marriage are community property. Patricia explained. But given that she initiated the divorce, clearly wants out quickly to pursue this other man, H, and we have concrete evidence of infidelity and financial misuse, 8, my professional assessment is she'll accept a reasonable settlement just to expedite the process and avoid public disclosure of this evidence. How quickly can we move? If she cooperates, H, we can have this finalized in about 60 days. If she tries to drag it out or make unreasonable demands, H, we file a motion for temporary orders and remind her attorney what we have. I nodded. I want to file immediately. No discussion. H, no mediation. File the petition and serve her the papers. Excellent. That is the correct strategic move. H, when the initiator of the divorce is blindsided by the immediate filing, it instantly shifts the power dynamic. She wanted control of the narrative. You're taking control of the process. I authorized Patricia to proceed. By Tuesday afternoon, while I was sitting at my hotel desk reviewing vendor contracts, Patricia's office delivered the news. Anna was officially served with divorce papers at the house. The move was fast, surgical, and completely unanticipated by Anna, who had likely envisioned a long, agonizing negotiation where she dictated the terms of my surrender. The moment the papers were served, her composed attitude vanished. My phone, which had been blissfully silent for 36 hours, exploded with calls, texts, and voicemails. I let every single one go unanswered, watching the notification count climb with an almost clinical satisfaction. The messages were a predictable progression of denial and outrage. You filed for divorce. We were supposed to talk about this first. You cannot just make this decision unilaterally without even discussing it with me. My attorney says you are being completely unreasonable and we need to communicate. The hypocrisy was thick enough to cut with a knife. She had staged a public announcement, declaring the marriage over, and now that I had officially complied with her request, I was the one being unreasonable for not wanting to discuss it. The strategic move had been successful. By filing immediately, I had taken the emotional leverage she sought and replaced it with cold, unassailable legal process. I was no longer emotionally available for her games. I was simply her opposing counsel's client. Moving an asset division case toward conclusion. The sense of vulnerability I'd felt walking out the door was now replaced by a protective armor of legal documentation and professional resolve. The internal conflict shifted entirely. The risk of emotional ruin was being mitigated by meticulous execution. I had secured my position. Now, I just had to wait for the predictable counter-move. The moment the papers were served, the confident theater Anna had staged collapsed into panicked, desperate attempts to regain control. The serving of the divorce petition was the opening move in the counter-offensive. And Anna's reaction was exactly the chaos I had anticipated. She'd wanted a drawn-out discussion where her friends could validate her bravery. Instead, she got a cold legal document informing her that the battle was already underway, with terms dictated by me. The texts became more frequent, shifting from indignation to bargaining. You cannot do this, Albert. We need to communicate. My attorney says you are making this difficult, and you need to call me? The irony was palpable. She who had refused to communicate for 7 months was now demanding communication. I kept the thread muted. Maintaining complete silence. In logistics, you never negotiate from a position of weakness, and right now, she had zero leverage. My silence was my most powerful tool. Wednesday morning, the front desk of the extended stay hotel called my room around 8 o'clock. Mr. Patterson. There is a woman in the lobby claiming to be your wife. She is requesting to come up to your room. I looked out the window at the parking lot, feeling a cool, detached amusement. No. Thank you. I am not receiving visitors. Understood, sir. I could hear a muffled, rising agitation on the phone line. Followed by the distant sound of Anna arguing with the front desk clerk. She must have thought my logistical control only extended as far as my office. She thought she could bypass the system by going straight to the source. The clerk, trained in the mundane chaos of hotel management. calmly explained that I was a guest who had declined her visit, and she needed to leave the property. I could almost picture her red-faced frustration, realizing the script had entirely gone off the rails. Thursday, she tried ambushing me at work. I was sitting at my desk, calmly reviewing a new freight contract, when my assistant, Maria, buzzed me. Or Mr. Patterson, a woman named Anna is here. She claims to be your wife. She is demanding to speak with you about an urgent personal matter. Thank you, Maria. Please inform her that I am in back meetings all afternoon and am unavailable. Please do not let her pass the reception area. I wasn't in meetings. I was watching the security camera feed on a small monitor, which covered the reception area. I watched Anna argue, attempt to sound official, and then resort to thinly veiled threats about making a scene. Maria, a veteran of corporate bureaucracy, handled her with calm, professional politeness until Anna finally stormed out, frustrated by the unyielding institutional barrier I had erected. This was my world, the world of systems and rules, and she had no fluency in it. The week culminated on Friday afternoon. Tyler sent me a screenshot. Anna had posted a long, self-pitying status on social media. Going through one of the most difficult times of my life as my marriage ends. So incredibly grateful for my support system and for finally having the courage to choose myself. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the exact same thing. Trust the journey? The comments were flooded with predictable praise from the sisterhood. You are so brave, Anna. Proud of you for prioritizing your happiness. Lauren, Kristen, and Beth were all there, cheering her on. Actively reinforcing her victim narrative, while the divorce papers sat on her attorney's desk. But Tyler had sent me a second screenshot, a true gift of strategic timing. Blake's Instagram account had posted that same day. New beginnings with someone incredibly special. Life is too short to waste time settling for mediocrity when real connection is possible. They had gone public. They were broadcasting their relationship while we were still legally married, while divorce proceedings were literally just starting. The timing couldn't have been worse for them or better for me. Anna had just handed me a massive piece of negotiating leverage on a silver platter. I immediately forwarded the screenshots to Patricia. The move was so overtly aggressive, so brazenly public. It proved Anna's calculated indifference to legal consequences and only fortified my position that she was only motivated by getting out quickly to be with Blake. But the real collapse began later that same day. Blake, the confident younger man, wasn't quite as immune to reality as Anna. Tyler, with his network of local contacts, quickly confirmed the devastating fallout for Blake. His ex-wife saw the public post. She immediately filed for a custody modification, arguing to the court that Blake was displaying poor judgment and creating an unstable environment by openly conducting an affair with a married woman. Blake, suddenly facing reduced custody time and increased child support payments. A real-world financial consequence. Backed off the relationship with Anna almost instantly. He scrubbed the post, and his profile went private. Anna's confident declaration of choosing herself had lasted less than 48 hours. H. The foundation of her entire exit strategy, her affair partner, had abandoned her the second it cost him money and stability. The internal pressure on Anna must have been immense. My cold silence and her lover's sudden flight had worked in lethal tandem. H. The emotional detachment I practiced had protected me, allowing me to observe the inevitable failure of her hastily constructed emotionally hollow plan. The stage was set for the final reckoning, which would reveal the true cost of her choices. With the affair exposed and the support system compromised, the toxicity of the empowerment group turned inward, destroying its members. The second week following the divorce announcement was when the carefully constructed reality Anna and her friends had built began to fully crumble. My logistical playbook had neutralized her emotional tactics and secured my financial position. Now, external forces were dissolving her support structure. Patricia called me on Monday morning with an update on the legal front. Your wife's attorney reached out to discuss settlement terms. They've submitted their initial proposal. And what high-value shipment are they requesting? I asked, unable to keep the cynicism out of my voice. Classic overreach designed to anchor negotiations high. They want the house sold and the proceeds split 50-50. They want half of your total retirement accounts, and they're asking for ongoing spousal support. It's entirely unreasonable, but expected. My house is not community property. The deed is airtight. My pre-marital funds are protected. She has comparable earning potential. What is our counteroffer? The counter is non-negotiable, Albert. House remains entirely yours. Retirement account split based solely on contributions made during the 7 years of marriage, not total value. No ongoing spousal support. A clean break. Both parties walk away with what they legally brought in, plus their fair share of the marital assets. File it, I said, and include the documentation of the hotel charges. Remind them that we have verifiable evidence of marital funds being used to finance an affair. The settlement offer did not land well with Anna's attorney, who Patricia reported was attempting to push back hard, but the legal framework was ironclad. The house documentation was irrefutable. And 7 years wasn't nearly long enough to justify ongoing spousal support in Arizona, particularly with evidence of infidelity. The legal conflict was beginning to shift entirely in my favor, not because of the affair, but because of the sheer strength of the underlying documentation I had protected for years. But the real satisfying collapse was happening on the social front, thanks again to Tyler's well-connected network. Tyler called me mid-week with a report on the fallout from Blake's social media post and subsequent flight. It's a domino effect. Albert, the sisterhood is imploding. Apparently, Kristen's husband. After seeing Blake's post and realizing the context of Anna's sudden divorce, he started asking questions about his wife's own empowerment sessions. He discovered Kristen had also been conducting an affair with a coworker while simultaneously attending their group strategy meetings. He promptly filed for divorce himself, citing Kristen's infidelity and the toxic environment that encouraged it. And Lauren, I asked. Lauren's long-term Term boyfriend moved out, Tyler confirmed. H. She tried pulling the same divorce announcement stunt as Anna, saying she deserved more. The H. But he had already seen the cracks and had texts proving she was also seeing someone else. H. He didn't file for divorce because they weren't married, but he cleaned out his shared accounts and vanished. Suddenly, H. The supportive sisterhood had evaporated. When everyone was facing their own legal consequences, their own husbands filing for divorce, H. and their own reputations in jeopardy, there was no energy left to prop up Anna's manufactured bravery. H. Their philosophy, that comfort was a trap and that they deserved more, had been exposed as a cheap justification for infidelity and reckless self-interest. The H. They had conflated toxicity with empowerment, and now they were all paying the individual price for their collective terrible advice. Anna's increasingly desperate social media posts reflected this loss of support. They shifted from confident declarations to needy, frantic platitudes. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are. When circumstances get difficult, and real love doesn't run away when things get complicated. The it stands firm. The audience for her victimhood was shrinking rapidly as her closest friends suddenly needed to play the victim role themselves. I felt a flicker of empathy for the human cost, a brief, cold recognition of the scale of destruction. But I quickly suppressed it. I was trained to assess failures, not dwell on sentiment. Their collective terrible choices had consequences, just as my careful planning had consequences. The fact that her social scaffolding had completely disintegrated meant that my final negotiation would be with a person who had no backup, no emotional shield, and no one to tell her she was being brave. Friday evening of week 2, Patricia informed me that Anna's attorney was pushing hard for me to meet her to discuss the emotional component of the settlement. I declined, but then realized that I needed to close the loop. I needed to see her broken narrative firsthand to finalize the emotional detachment. When the front desk called to say Anna was back in the lobby, I agreed to meet her. It wasn't pity. It was the final, logistical step of quality control. I needed to confirm that the threat of public exposure of the affair was sufficient to secure the clean, swift exit I required. The climax was set, and this time the audience would only be me. He saw her in the lobby, a sobbing figure in sweatpants. And for the first time, he allowed the cold, hard reality of his betrayal to meet her consequence. I stood in the corner of the hotel lobby, waiting. It was dimly lit, quiet. Smelling faintly of commercial disinfectant and burnt coffee. When Anna walked toward me, I barely recognized her. She looked absolutely terrible. Her hair was unbrushed, pulled back haphazardly. Her eyes were red, rimmed and swollen from crying. And she was wearing ratty sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, a complete departure from the put-together, demanding woman who had orchestrated the divorce announcement 2 weeks prior. She was entirely without her protective facade, and crucially, without her 3 cheering friends. She looked smaller, defeated, and utterly alone. As she approached, her voice was shaky.
Quiet. We need to talk.
I'm listening, I said. My voice was low and calm, devoid of any warmth or antagonism. It was the tone of a supervisor receiving a final report. She took a hesitant step closer. This has completely gotten out of hand. Albert.
I never wanted things to go this way.
I thought. She trailed off, searching for the right words. Unable to find the familiar, rehearsed lines. How exactly did you want things to go, Anna? I asked. You announced you wanted a divorce in front of 3 witnesses. I filed for divorce exactly like you asked. This is literally what you requested. You wanted an end to the marriage. I am facilitating your stated goal as efficiently as possible. She started crying in earnest then, her shoulders shaking. But the tears did nothing to soften the armor of logical detachment I had built. I thought we'd talk about it first. Work through our issues. I didn't think you'd just completely give up on us without even trying. Work through what specifically? I challenged, pushing through the last barrier of her denial. Your 7-month affair with Blake, The dozens of hotel meetings you charged to our joint credit card, The lies about working from home while you were actually spending afternoons with your personal trainer. Which issue should we work through? Her face went completely white. The color drained away, leaving her skin stark against her swollen eyes. How did you? It doesn't matter how I found out. I interrupted. What matters is you made your decision. You wanted out of this marriage. You wanted to be with Blake. You've been given exactly what you asked for. I'm just facilitating your stated goal. My wife announced, We've decided you're getting divorced, with her friends watching. I said, okay, and walked out. 2 weeks later, she was sobbing outside my hotel room, saying I ruined her life. The repetition of the hook, spoken aloud in the sterile quiet of the lobby, hung there. The precise culmination of her action and her consequence. She collapsed into a rush of desperate excuses. Blake and I, it wasn't. It is not what you think. We were just... I have screenshots, Anna. I stated simply. 7 months of messages. Credit card statements showing twice weekly hotel visits. I know exactly what it was. You wanted to choose yourself, and you chose him. You wanted freedom, and you chose betrayal. Every single one of those choices has consequences. I made a mistake, she pleaded. I got caught up in something and didn't know how to stop it. But I don't want to lose everything we built together. The house was supposed to be ours. We built a life there together. I shook my head slightly. The house is mine. Purchased 3 years before I met you. Mortgage payments from my separate account. Your name was never on the deed. That's not marital property.
That's not fair,
she cried, her voice cracking. What's not fair? I countered. Looking her directly in the eye, finally allowing the cold truth to hit her. Is you conducting a 7-month affair while planning your exit strategy. Is you trying to take half of everything I built before you came along and financed your infidelity with my money. You want to talk about fair? I could drag this affair through court proceedings publicly. I could make sure everyone in your professional and social circle knows exactly why the marriage ended. Instead, I'm offering you a clean exit with what you're legally entitled to. The bargaining tactics began, cycling through fear and manipulation. I can't afford my own place on just my salary. You should have considered that before sleeping with your personal trainer twice a week in hotel rooms charged to our joint credit card. I replied. I felt no satisfaction, only a clinical necessity to shut down the emotional appeals. I listened to her try several more arguments, the promises to end things with Blake, assurances she'd fix the marriage, and renewed attempts to deflect blame onto her friends. I allowed her to exhaust every single emotional tactic. When she finally ran out of words, standing before me with nowhere else to turn, I delivered the final, non-negotiable term, echoing my legal strategy. Patricia sent your attorney a fair settlement offer. It gives you exactly what you contributed during the marriage and your fair share of jointly acquired assets. I keep what I had before you arrived. Sign it, and we're done in 60 days. And if you refuse to sign, I concluded, making sure the consequence was perfectly clear. Then we go to court, where I present detailed evidence of a 7-month affair conducted with marital funds, and your attorney tries to convince a judge why you deserve more than the law entitles you to, despite that conduct. Your choice? I turned, leaving her standing alone in the quiet lobby. I had fully confronted the betrayal, not with tears or anger, but with an unshakable adherence to fact and strategy. The emotional cost was processed, paid for with the documentation, and now, the execution was final. The weight of vulnerability had been replaced by the quiet triumph of control. It was difficult to watch, even for me. But I remembered the Marriott charges, the blatant financial abuse, and the carefully planned exit. The flicker of pity died, replaced by the necessity of logistical cleanup. I was not there to save her. I was there to confirm the transaction was final. 3 days later, the signature arrived. The finalizing the operational phase of the divorce and opening the door to a life that was finally his own. Anna signed the settlement agreement. Patricia Vance called me with the update. Anna's attorney had tried one last attempt at negotiating better terms, pleading for spousal support. But the evidence and the ironclad pre-marital purchase documentation made it impossible. There was no legal ground to demand more. The settlement was straightforward, clean, and entirely fair to the math. Anna received her share of marital assets accumulated during the 7 years, roughly $23,000 from joint savings, plus her portion of jointly purchased furniture and household items. I kept the house, my pre-marital retirement funds, and my vehicle. She kept her car and her own retirement accounts. There were no support payments and no ongoing financial obligations. It was a clean legal separation that perfectly reflected the reality of our contributions and, more importantly, the strategic decisions I had made over the last 2 weeks. The next month was pure logistics, separating joint bank accounts. Dividing the furniture we'd purchased together and scheduling the movers to get her remaining items out of my house. Anna took everything that was hers and moved in temporarily with Beth. Her social media went completely silent. The brave declarations of choosing herself vanished. Blake's Instagram scrubbed all mention of her entirely. The sisterhood, H, dealing with their own marital and financial wreckage, offered no further support. The H, the support system that had enabled and encouraged Anna's decisions, evaporated the moment everyone started facing individual consequences for their collective poor judgment. H, meanwhile, I threw myself back into work. H, without the constant background stress of a deteriorating marriage and Anna's increasing demands, my performance actually improved. H, my focus, honed by 2 weeks of crisis management, H, resulted in my promotion to senior logistics manager with a $12,000 salary increase plus better bonuses. H, the professional world rewarded the very detachment and methodical focus Anna had claimed made me mediocre. The divorce finalized exactly 60 days after she signed the settlement. H, I received an email from Patricia with the official decree attached. Congratulations, Albert. You are legally single again. Go live your best life. That evening I took my dog Duke for an extra long walk. I had adopted Duke shortly after moving into the house, long before I met Anna. He was loyal, uncomplicated, and a good listener. Later that night, I stopped by the animal shelter where I'd adopted him and donated the exact amount of money I would have spent buying out Anna's half of the house. H, had I not been so careful with the deed. It felt like better karma. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Lauren, one of the original witnesses to the divorce announcement, at a grocery store. She was buying a single carton of milk and looked hollow. H, tired. She looked genuinely embarrassed to see me. Hey, Albert, she said, her voice small. How have you been? Good. H, and you? Honestly, it has been rough. H. I didn't realize how much we had all screwed up until it was too late and everything fell apart. Yeah, I replied, loading a sack of potatoes into my cart. Consequences have a way of clarifying reality. She hesitated, chewing on her lip. For what it is worth, I am really sorry. We genuinely convinced ourselves we were helping Anna find happiness, but looking back, H, we were not helping her at all. H, we were just validating her worst impulses and enabling terrible decisions. I appreciate the honesty. H, Lauren. Anna asks about you sometimes, wonders how you're doing, if you're dating anyone. I looked at her. H, and the final barrier of emotional closure clicked into place. She can keep wondering. I paid for my groceries and walked away. Some apologies come too late to fix anything. 4 months post-divorce, my life had settled into a comfortable H, productive routine that actually made me happy, instead of just functionally content. H, the house was entirely mine and decorated exactly how I wanted. Work was challenging and rewarding. My emotional arc, which had started in guarded avoidance, ended not in passionate vulnerability, but in a quiet H, unshakable confidence built on self-reliance and the knowledge that I had handled a personal catastrophe with strength and integrity. H, I had lost a wife, but I had gained my peace, my home, and the absolute certainty that I could manage any problem life threw at me. H, I was completely, truly, and happily free.